Today, we're taking a look into a really specific life story. We're using archival sources, notes, and records to build a personal biography that, well, it really acts as a powerful lens into the larger social history of 20th century Britain.
It really does.
We are exploring the life of Connie Hughes, a woman born in 1913 who navigated the monumental turbulence of the interwar years and the really challenging decades after World War II, all in and around the town of Bridlington.
And what's so fascinating here is how often figures like Connie, people whose lives were lived under just immense duress, are overlooked by those big historical narratives.
Right.
Her personal story, it offers this remarkably detailed insight into the social history of the working class during that time. Our mission today is really to explore survival, personal resilience, and to examine how these huge external pressures, war, scarcity, housing instability, forced, critical, and honestly heartbreaking choices on one person.
An extraordinary life lived in extraordinarily turbulent times. Okay, so let's unpack this journey, starting right at the beginning, at the foundations of her life.
And so
Connie was born September 25, 1913, in the village of Ulrome. Her parents were Ethel and Harry Hughes, and she grew up attending the local school with her 6 siblings, Elsie, Jim, Winnie, Tom, Alan, and Nancy.
And the sources we have, they just paint this beautiful, almost cinematic picture of that early pre-war community. It reveals a highly traditional, very cohesive society.
It really does. Look at the details around Empire Day on May 24th, 1925. This wasn't just a day off school.
No, it was a deeply patriotic community ritual.
Absolutely. The local school kids attended a service, then they had the ceremony of hoisting and saluting the flag. They sang these rousing nationalist songs like Rule Britannia and Hurrah for Merry England.
And her sister, Winnie, was a train bearer to the Queen of the May. It's just such a perfect snapshot of a highly structured, almost rigid society rooted in that national identity, before the storms of the Depression and the war really hit.
And that structure, it extended into their religious and social lives, too.
We have records from the Sunday school service at the Ulrome Wesleyan Chapel in July 1925.
Right, and Connie and her brother Ronald, who they called Jim, they gave the opening item, "Welcome," and Connie even gave a solo performance. That sense of community pride, of public participation, it was just central to her early life.
And we even see their competitive side at the sports day later that afternoon. Connie came second in the senior girls race, and Jim won the sack race.
So these early years, they were defined by this really tight community, simple, predictable pleasures. But that stability obviously wasn't going to last.
No, it didn't. As was so common for working-class young women in the 1930s, Connie spent her mid-teens until she came of age working in service in the village.
And for listeners who might not be familiar with that term, in service basically meant domestic servitude.
Exactly. Working as a maid or household help, often with very little pay, very little autonomy, living under your employer's roof, it was her first big step out of that family unit.
From there, she transitions into marriage. Connie and a man named George were married in April 1935 at the Citadel, which was the local Salvation Army building.
And the Salvation Army in that era, it often provided this vital social and, moral structure, especially for young working-class couples.
The sources describe a hopeful, if simple, wedding. Connie in an elegant gown with wildflowers, George in a smart navy suit. They were building their family on the very edge of global chaos.
And that family grew. And it grew fast. They settled at 4 Rope Walk in Bridlington. Their first son, Brian, was born in the spring of '37.
Then their daughter Marlene in the early summer of '38. And then Pauline arrived just 2 weeks after the outbreak of war in September 1939.
So just imagine that. You now have 3 children under the age of 3 as scarcity and violence are gripping the entire nation.
And this pressure cooker of rapid family expansion and wartime scarcity, it just created the perfect storm for a personal disaster.
It did. And this is where the sources reveal the pivotal, really devastating turning point in Connie's story. This is 1940.
This moment is a serious pivot point. Connie was found guilty of a wartime offense, looting a coat and a dress from the pavement.
And we have to really understand the context here. The sources make it absolutely clear this was driven by pure, grinding desperation. When society fails to provide the basics, people make impossible choices.
But what makes this so profound isn't just the act itself, it's the source of the fracture.
Right. It was George. Her own husband reported her to the authorities.
A staggering betrayal. Why would he do that to the mother of his 3 small children?
Because he saw an opportunity. The sources are pretty clear that George was looking for a chance to leave his family and start a new life with Gertrude, another married woman who was, at the same time, leaving her own husband and 3 young daughters.
So this wasn't some act of moral duty.
Not at all. It was an act of profound, opportunist betrayal, and it was fueled by the sheer chaos of wartime stress.
And Connie's own defense in court, it just speaks volumes. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Had she been in better circumstances, I should not have taken the coat and dress which was on the pavement. My husband had only given me 10 shillings these last few weeks."
That testimony places the blame squarely on destitution. But the state's response was brutal. She was found guilty and sentenced to 2 months of hard labor.
We should pause on that for a moment. This wasn't just 2 months in a jail cell.
No. Hard labor meant physical, punitive work designed to break the spirit. It just shows the utter severity and the lack of compassion in the legal system for petty theft, even when it was so clearly driven by starvation.
And that judgment, paired with George's betrayal, it completely fractured her life. The immediate cost of that sentence was catastrophic.
Utterly. While she was confined, George fled Bridlington with Gertrude and all 3 children.
And the sources confirm she never saw Brian, Marlene, or Pauline again. The speed of that loss, 3 children gone, a marriage dissolved, a criminal record, it's almost unimaginable.
It is. She was left completely isolated. When Connie was released in January 1940, she came back to a life with no home, no employment. She was essentially a pariah in her own community.
And her only option was to move in with George's father, James.
So even after his son betrayed her, she was dependent on her father-in-law.
Right. Work was impossible to find. She was surviving on a little money James gave her for keeping house. And this is where her survival mode truly kicks in, and she starts to build a radical new path for herself.
Ugh.
She started using that small allowance to go dancing in the Harbor District.
And if we trace that need for income, this pivot makes complete sense. Dancing provided a necessary emotional escape, sure, but more importantly, it was a financial strategy.
Because the Harbor District was frequented by fishermen.
Exactly. Fishermen from all over the country, from Europe, who, it seems, were never short of money. During the war, fishing was a protected, essential industry. Those men had access to resources and cash that was just unobtainable for the average civilian struggling with rationing.
That financial disparity proved crucial. The sources confirm this environment allowed her to earn money for her own flat through various favors. It let her finally move out of James's house and get her independence back.
She was resourceful enough to create her own economy when the official economy completely shut her out.
She was. And this newfound independence quickly led to a new family structure. Starting late in 1940, she became pregnant, leading to the births of 4 more boys in quick succession.
Maurice in July 1941, then Alan in 1943, Malcolm in 1946, and finally Paul in 1951.
First 3 children gone, and now 4 new boys to raise, all while she was transient and completely independent. And the sources detail this really calculated move she made to protect them.
Yes, and this is such a critical insight into her resourcefulness as a mother at that time.
Right.
To save the boys any future embarrassment, either from our history or from having multiple fathers, she listed George as the father for all 4 of them on the official records.
But he wasn't the father.
No. We know now from DNA evidence detailed in the sources that none of the boys have the same father. This wasn't deceit. It was an act of fierce social protection. It gave them a necessary legal veneer of stability in a harsh social climate that heavily stigmatized single mothers.
And that protective measure speaks volumes about the challenges she faced. From 1940 to 1947, she was incredibly mobile.
Right, living in a succession of different flats in Bridlington Quay, Hilderthorpe Road, Palace Avenue, St. Hilda Street, just constantly moving, constantly trying to find some housing stability that was always under threat.
And that housing crisis really came to a head in 1947. In late 46, she found a furnished bungalow for £1 a week. But less than 6 months later, the owner wanted her out.
Why?
Because they realized they could make a lot more money using the bungalow for holiday accommodation now that the war was over.
Okay.
So she refused to leave. She took the matter to Bridlington County Court in March of 1947. But the judge's ruling, it just clarifies a major social injustice of the era. He ruled she had no protection under the Rent Restrictions Act.
And the reason was because the property was furnished. And this is a really important technical point that reveals the economic traps of the time.
How so?
Well, post-war, tenants in unfurnished properties had legal protections against eviction and rent hikes. But working-class people like Connie, they often didn't have the money to buy their own furniture, which forced them into renting furnished places.
Yeah.
So by necessity, they were stuck in these high-risk rental agreements with zero security.
So they could just be evicted on short notice if the landlord found a more profitable use for the property.
Exactly. And that legal technicality forced another drastic life-altering choice. Her response was immediate and decisive. She moved herself and her 4 boys to an old abandoned RAF camp in Carnaby.
She knew people there already, right?
Yes, she went there knowing 2 friends, Mary Keene and Clara Bishop, had already set up there. The residents were definitely known locally as squatters, which carries a specific stigma.
Oh.
But what's fascinating is the pragmatism of the community. Connie was actually paying Bridlington Council £1 a week for Hut 64B. For 8 long years, from 1947 to 1955, she managed to create a functional home and a stable environment for her sons out of abandoned military buildings.
8 years. That's a lifetime for young children, and they grew up in that camp. And despite the setting, life was far from isolated. We have this specific anecdote from October 47 when she was in a car crash. She was traveling in a taxi with her friend, a Mrs. Hart, and 2 Danish fishermen from the vessel Mary.
And that detail is a crucial marker. It shows that life in the camp, while structurally difficult, wasn't one of isolated, hopeless poverty. She was maintaining those vital social and economic networks connected to the docks. She was still independent, still resilient.
That period of intense instability finally came to an end in the autumn of 1955. This marked the real transformative journey to genuine lasting stability. The family moved from the dilapidated structures of Carnaby Camp to 14 Medforth Road in Bridlington.
And the sources capture the emotional significance of that move so perfectly. I mean, imagine the joy of moving into a proper house with a brick facade and a neatly trimmed garden. It's a physical symbol of permanence.
And there's that detail of the 4 boys sitting in the back of the removal van with the doors half open for the short trip, symbolizing their journey from transience to, being rooted.
It was so much more than a new address. It was community acceptance. The neighbors at Medforth Road welcomed them, which was a huge contrast to the stigma of being known as a squatter. Connie found genuine belonging among the other mothers.
And it was here at Medforth Road that she found Jack, her life partner.
Right. This stable new chapter led to the birth of their daughter, Angie, towards the end of 1956, completing the family. The Medforth Road house became a true haven, a symbol of the eventual triumph of resilience over hardship.
A place where her children could finally thrive without the constant threat of eviction or judgment. That house became her anchor for the rest of her life.
It did.
Connie was found by Angela in 1991, passing away peacefully on the morning of Friday, August 2nd. She was surrounded by her family: Alan, Malcolm, Paul, Angela, and several others.
And a poignant final note is that she was reunited in death with her son Maurice, who had passed away 4 years earlier. She rests in Bridlington Cemetery, a testament to the life she built and the stability she finally achieved against all odds.
So what does this life, detailed so intimately in these sources, tell us today? I mean, Connie's journey is just a masterclass in sheer survival. It demonstrates the incredible resourcefulness you need when the formal structures of society, the legal system, the economy, the housing market just fail you.
It really highlights that central, often overlooked tension between public judgment, that harsh 2-month hard labor sentence for taking a coat, and the private necessity of making complex, sometimes illegal choices just to feed and shelter your children.
She was judged so severely by the system, profoundly betrayed by her husband, yet she built this stable, loving family unit despite being rejected by society.
Her legacy is found in that community she built at Medforth Road and in the thriving family she left behind. It's a powerful testament to the resilience that endures, that transcends generations. It proves that a person can take impossible circumstances and still build a safe, rooted place for their children.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over. The initial event that cost her her first 3 children, being reported by her husband George for looting, was simultaneously the harsh trigger that forced her into a life of absolute independence.
That traumatic loss and public condemnation, it forced her onto this resourceful path of operating outside the system, which is what ultimately led to the stable life she built with Jack and her 4 younger sons and daughter. So the question is, how does one truly measure the cost versus the eventual outcome of such a turbulent, tragic start?